All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. We're going to do a few quick introductions. I do want to let everybody know if you do join as a attendee, please feel free to use the Q&A area to pose any questions, and we'll try to get them answered towards the end. If not, we'll communicate back on those. But I'd like to thank all of our panelists for coming on this morning, and we'll go through and introduce everyone. And my name is Zunzunegui. I'm head of customer success here at QModo, and I'm joined at QModo by our president, Jeff, and I'll let Jeff introduce himself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Again, thanks for joining. President and original founder of QModo. Right now, I head up the SME team. I come from that world. I did originally a civil engineer degree from Michigan Tech, built homes for many years, and then did 11 years in healthcare as a facilities director. And it was during that time in healthcare that I saw some of the challenges that technology needed to fill the gap. So got a hold of a great team out of Atlanta, including Ed, and came up with QModo. So we're excited to talk to you all about the challenges that Dave and Eric are facing every day in higher education.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And as you mentioned, we're honored and appreciate their time. We know Dave and Eric are very busy, so we appreciate getting an opportunity to ask them some questions and have this discussion. So Eric, can you go ahead and please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I'm Eric Moore. I am the Director of Maintenance at Auburn University. As Director of Maintenance, I've got all your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, access control, automotive, carpenters, painters, a variety of trades, where we maintain roughly 9 million square feet worth of campus space. I've been at Auburn for about 11 years. Prior to this, I was in automotive manufacturing, and originally I do have a mechanical engineering degree from Auburn.
Okay, thank you. Dave, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Krings. I'm the energy plant engineer at Michigan Tech University up in Houghton, Michigan. I'm also a mechanical engineer, so Eric and I have some things in common. I rejoined the group up here at Michigan Tech about 2 years ago. I graduated from here originally in 1992 and spent most of my career all over the world working in pulp and paper, utilities, pharmaceuticals, some military work, and did some consulting for a decade or so, and just kind of back up here at Michigan Tech, given a few years of my experience back to the place where I started, and happy to be here.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks. And if you three don't mind me saying, we've got 4 nerdy engineers here, so we'll have a lively debate and discussion as we talk about this topic. So we'll jump right into one of the broader questions that we wanted to ask Eric and Dave, of what are the top challenges, let's say the top 3 challenges that you think that education is facing in facilities management today. Eric, do you want to kind of start us off? But we'll keep this interactive and, we'll work off each other.
Sounds good. Yeah. I would say probably some of my biggest challenges right now are recruiting and retaining highly qualified staff. The current labor market is challenging to us, and keeping enough of them on staff to meet the work demand that we have. I am short quite a few positions and continuously recruiting. The recent COVID outbreak, as everybody has probably experienced, supply chain shortages and getting materials and parts that we need to fix issues has been an ongoing challenge for us. And coupled with that is the rising cost of all those materials against our limited budget that we have, trying to maintain these buildings and keep them running as our clients expect us to run them. And then I guess my third thing was, we're building new buildings all the time, and new buildings bring in new technologies, new equipment, new challenges to some of my older technicians, and even to my newer technicians that don't have the experience in that high technology. We are a research institution, so we have a lot of high tech buildings that we are responsible for maintaining.
You know what, Eric, it brings up a good point. I didn't think about until I think when we were talking to you about new buildings. I always thought of a new building as being easy, I got a brand new toy and everything's going to run great and all of that. And I think you or one of your counterparts had brought up it's a lot easier on the old ones because those guys are used to it, right? They know all the tricks of the trade. They know the little intricacies of the building. And now you got this brand new building and not really sure where the equipment is, how it runs, how it operates, and the tricks that happen in that building. So I remember, like I said, when we were talking about that, that was an interesting point. So people that think, well, you don't need new technology or help in new buildings, I think you may need it more.
I would agree. We spend a lot of time in our new buildings.
Yeah.
Trying to
Dave-
figure that out.
Dave, I'm sure some of that resonated with you, but anything else you want to add?
No question about it. The recruiting and retention is an issue for us. And I think from the standpoint of being a public university where we struggle sometimes to keep up with the prevailing wages in the area around us. And we are seeing a lot of pressure from the very, bottom of the hiring process out there across the community because starting wages have been pushed up because of the situation of shortages and the difference between an unskilled laborer working in a big box store or even a fast food place is not that much between them and our starting wage technicians, which is tough. And then just the general lack of skilled personnel being available at all to hire at any cost. It's just not like it used to be. It tends to be a difficult thing to find those people. So keeping them is something we work really hard at. I don't disagree with the access to materials is an issue too, but I think the other one that really stands out for us, which would be my third, is we have lots of interest in building here on our campus as well as they do down in Auburn. And however, the contributions are for buildings and doing research, not for doing maintenance on the building. So we spend a lot of time trying to make that pitch that if you want sustainability and good energy efficiency, we have to put some of those resources into taking care of the buildings when they're built. And it's always a struggle.
Yeah.
I would agree with
Yeah.
that comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Ed.
No, go ahead. Aaron.
I was gonna say, yeah, Dave, I guess that is another big problem here is there's a lot of interest in building a new big building, but some investment in some of our existing infrastructure and building structures it can be a challenge. And it costs just as much to do.
So with
No.
those challenges, what are some of the things that you guys are doing to try to overcome those challenges? Finding some technologies out there maybe that are helping with that, or changing the ways that you do things, or I guess we would start with the people problem. Obviously, you're a lot of times you end up with people that maybe are not quite as skilled out of the gate, and you got to get them up to speed, right? And try to help them through that first year or two so that they're still productive employees. I guess what are you doing to try to solve that or bridge that gap?
So multifaceted approach here at Auburn, internal to maintenance, internal facilities. We have started developing a extensive training program. So I actually have a group that one of their responsibilities is seeking out training from either vendors or suppliers on high-tech equipment, looking at where our weakness is and our technicians, seeking out that training, lining up that training and getting that training up to and including them executing and delivering that training to them. So that kind of covers the getting the new technicians up to speed, and that's an ever-growing, ever-changing. It's still somewhat in its infancy, so we're still trying to grow that, but been doing it pretty well for a couple of years now. Hitting the low-hanging fruit. Now we're getting into more high-tech stuff. As far as recruiting, I've been working with our HR department very closely. We've worked on some workforce development programs with the local, even all the way down to the high school level, recruiting, giving tours to high schools, making them aware of the kind of jobs that we have here on campus and how they could make a career here, what could be a career path with the university. Yeah, we're a big university in a small town, so we struggle sometimes for people to know what we do, and some of these service level jobs that technicians aren't well known, even in custodial levels. But we're also starting an apprenticeship program. It's been in development with the state of Alabama. Haven't got it kicked off the ground yet, but hoping this summer we can start our first apprenticeship program, because we have basically come to the realization that we're going to have to grow our own. Dave made a comment earlier about wages. Our wages, while the university tries to be market competitive with wages, we are closer to market than we used to be. And we continuously strive to get our wages at market. But part of it is those high level technicians we're just not going to be able to recruit and afford. So we got to kind of grow our own up through with the training and the apprenticeship programs and things like that.
Awesome. Wow, we got some good things going on there, Eric, for sure.
Yep.
Good ideas. I love the grow your own, the apprenticeship program. That's a great idea. Because they are great jobs. They really are. They're a job that somebody could come into and make a living and raise their family off of a job at that university, or at any university, So yeah, I like it.
Yep.
Dave, anything to add, or are you doing anything along those lines?
Well, a big push for us right now has been to try to find ways to make it a great place to work, and wages is certainly important, and nobody's going to be happy if they aren't making enough money to make a decent living. But there are a lot of other levers that we can pull. So we've been working really hard on that and trying to create an environment where people are enjoying the job and they have some room to move up. And similar to Eric's explanation, we're doing a lot of things with our own home-built training programs. And one of the things that really stands out with this really generally younger group that's coming in is the way they learn is so different from how we did back in the 80s and 90s. Sitting in a 2-hour-long class for them isn't the same as it was for us back in the day, and they kind of prefer a 5-minute YouTube video to a 2-hour class. So we've been utilizing that quite a lot with the QModo app out in the buildings, because the techs that have been around a while are willing to share information, just record it on a clip or whatever and post it against the barcode on the machines. And the newer guys are just really naturally kind of attracted to that. So we use that too.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kids just learn differently, not that it's bad or good or whatever, it's just differently. And I think that we all are too, right? I'm Googling stuff at home all the time on how to fix a snowblower in my truck or whatever it might be, looking for that little video. And I think that is, as technology goes on, QModo is one of those platforms that has the training that you're talking about, Eric, that you would have, at their fingertips when they need it out in the field, and then you empower those employees. And I think when you empower employees and make them confident in their job, they tend to stay on longer and become long-term employees. So yeah. That's good.
Along those lines, this might be a good kind of into kind of a next topic around technology. And what have you guys seen over the past, 5 years, or what horizon you're looking at, and maybe even looking into the future? Where would you like to see? Where have you seen technology help in the past, and where would you like to see technology go in the future? Dave, I'll open it up to you first.
Yep. It's a common conversation I have with Jeff almost every time he's over to visit. And it's been my opinion for the last 25 years or so that our old view of work order systems and ERP systems is just not adequate for what we're trying to do going forward. And I think more of a social interaction kind of a platform is a better way to go, where there's not a lot of learning curve and you don't have to sit down at a workstation to log into it and struggle to get into the information. And I like fewer layers and something that invites people in there and makes them feel good about going in to the system and interacting with it, posting things there. Certainly some moderation so that you don't have people putting trash up there. But I'm a firm believer that we ought to be able to give each other feedback on that system. And I like kind of like a 5-star ranking kind of way of going about it, where if somebody plans a job and it's not well planned, the techs ought to be able to say if it wasn't great, or if they make a repair and the requester's not happy with it. We ought to have that out in the open where we can learn and understand each other's points of view and improve. And I got to say, the younger folks are not afraid of that. In fact, they expect it. And I think those of us that aren't used to it, it feels strange, but we got to go there.
Yeah, kind of that instant feedback to know, okay, did I solve the problem I was there to solve?
Yep.
Yeah. Eric, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that along the lines. The social platform for the younger is that instant gratification, instant feedback. It's good too. But I guess another challenge on the flip side of that is I have a lot of older technicians that are, they're scared of the technology. They're scared to play with it and get in there and do what they need to do with it, or what we want them to use it for. So having it at their fingertips can sometimes be overwhelming to them, because an information overload or how do they get in there is a challenge to them. So having a friendly or a easy interface to all the information that's available at their fingertips. But definitely, so one of the challenges, we have, all my technicians have a device in their hand. They all carry a device that's, and I want them to have a device because I want the fingertips. I want the information they need to solve the problem at their fingertips. We have a lot of different systems. So what we run into is they're challenged to operate those handheld devices at times from the older technicians. They're just not comfortable with it, but making it user friendly and not overloading them with information so they get lost in it, but having it in a clear and concise format that's easy for them to use. And like Dave said, that they can seek out some information and give some feedback to everybody. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, most of the senior techs, they want to share that information, right? They're proud of that, and they should be. They worked hard to learn that and get really good at what they do, and it's just it's hard to get them up in front of a classroom and teach people. Usually a one-on-one out in the field is probably the best way that it happens, right? Is you do that. One of my comments Ed has heard a million times though is then you end up with two people doing one man's job a lot of the times, so productivity is dipping. You have to have some of that, but I feel like Q has definitely made it real easy to add and extract information out of that platform. Even for and we're finding that the senior techs are gravitating toward it because it is, we obsess on it being very easy. That's Ed is a great proponent of that and does a great job with that. But that's what we do.
That's just because I'm lazy and I want to get to things quicker. No, we were at another university up in New York, and we were meeting with the facilities manager and two of their supervisors, and they were saying that they were telling us they're all within 5 years of retiring or less, all three of them, right? And they were like, the supervisor was like, I've been here 40 years. There's nobody that knows it's a heat plant, just like you guys have, Dave. Nobody knows this building better than I do, but I don't feel like I can walk away, right? And how do I capture all this information? He was sharing that with us of how do I put it. So we actually, once he started talking, we got a bunch of videos on him explaining a lot of it. It was only two little snippets, but you can tell the wealth of knowledge that these folks have, that even the little thing, like he was showing us how to recycle the pump and said it seems trivial, but if you don't know how to do that, it's critical at certain times when you need that pump to execute.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, we just had one of our frontline building mechanics go on light duty and couldn't lift or pull or do any of his normal tasks out there, and they put him out on the floor in the dormitory where he was pretty much focused, and just had him walk around and make notes of how he does things and where things are, and took pictures and collected a bunch of information, which will go into the next batch of 4 buildings we put QModo into. So there's a lot of that where the guys are really excited to just capture it all and get it fed in there. So
yeah.
That institutional knowledge is key, and just like everybody, they're retiring and leaving. So how are we, the platform to pull it in, save it, and be able to show it to the next generation is key.
Is key.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's in that same breath, Eric, you got to say easy to use. Right?
Easy to
because
use.
they're all used to all the social media platforms, which are accessible, not just accessible, pulling that information is easy and quick.
Well, and they're also visual. So,
Yeah.
they talked about how they learn. They're, visual learners. It's a lot of visual learning. So those videos, those quick snips of video that, hey, this is how you do this one quick thing. Oh, that's what I need to know. Now I can run with it. I forgot this one thing. Oh, that's how you do it. So
Yep.
those
Yep.
are going to be keys.
Yeah, a lot of times it's just unpracticed things, right? I just haven't done it for a year, and you stand there in front of the equipment going, I know I've done this like 5 times, and there's a couple little tricks here, and it just helps you along through all of those moments. I guess moving on, guys, from that part of it. So preventive maintenance, we know that it is just critical in what we're doing in our buildings and trying to maintain our buildings and try and stay in front of the crisis situation, right? So I guess Dave, I can start with you. How do you do that? How do you present that or to your guys, and then how do you keep all that information documented so you know what they've done?
Yeah, when I got back here in 2021, the heating plant down here is 72 years old, so everything was paper based and in a binder somewhere. And the way things were labeled, documented, there really wasn't a good standard way of even numbering and naming a document, so you couldn't really look it up online or anything. So I started working with a couple of people down here that had written a lot of those procedures and started converting the obvious ones over to electronic PMs. And at first they were a little hesitant about it, thinking that it was just going to make things technically tricky. But once they realized that once the system was set up and it triggered them on a schedule and they came out of the printer on their own and reminded them to do them, they could really see that it's great if it says do this every month and it's in a binder, but if you've got 20 binders full of that stuff, who's looking through there to keep track of it, right? So it's kind of obvious, but for them, having not seen it done any other way, that was, the state of the art, and kind of comical coming into it from outside and trying to get them to come along. But it's been fun and interesting. And I think my favorite part about it is if you ever get a bunch of people to sit down together that are all experts on doing the tasks and have them write it down together, they get into the biggest fights about who's right. And they'll say, that's not how I do it. And you find out none of you know the best known way to do it. You each have a piece of it. I want it all on one piece of paper. And that's where the gold is, So I think that's a lot of fun. And really, if you ever want to test it on someone, just ask a group of maintenance techs to write down a procedure for how to wash a car, and you'll find out how big a difference that makes. So
it's kind of funny, Dave. We're working with a hospital in Maple Grove, and until we went there and introduced QModo into it, I don't think they realized exactly what you said, because they never knew what Ed did and Eric did and Dave did. Jeff just did his own thing, went his own way, and didn't realize that, nobody else does it the way that I do it, So I think that was one of the big benefits that we found there, is that everybody's doing their daily rounds and their checks and doing the things that they do inside of that hospital now the way that it should be done, right? Manufacturer's recommendations, you're covering warranties, you're doing all those things, best practice, and their whole staff is doing that, and it's documented that they're doing it correctly. That's a great point, Dave, and kind of funny. How about you, Eric? What's the process there?
So, Dave, you laugh. I've experienced the exact same thing with putting technicians. I've been doing this for 10 years, 5 years, 20 years. This is how you do it. Yeah, that's not what the manufacturer says. So we did at Auburn. I do have a team that is dedicated to preventive maintenance. We continuously grow that program. We started hitting the high level, high impact types of equipment. We do not do paper in any shape, form, or fashion anymore with it. It is all in our work management system. Like I said, every technician I have has a handheld device, so they are actually completing their checklists on their device, and it's automatically loading up into our work management system and our work orders, and they're capturing notes and pictures, and I replaced this part and that part. It's capturing my costs for them to do that work, the cost for the equipment, and then we're starting to kind of analyze and look at that. So it's a great software system that we built into. It has taken us a long time to get our technicians, especially some of those 20-year vets that know how to do it, to understand why they have to put it in here. SOPs, we've got our standard checklist that they got to complete. And we've been tweaking those and making them more efficient. And here's the high things you got to look at, trying to maximize the time that we have available. But building those SOPs and writing those SOPs, and like they said, getting that group to agree to, here is what you should be checking, is kind of, we've built those SOPs. They're available. They are in binders for the new technicians to take home and read if they want, but they're also on that software. They're buried in the software system. Having an easy way for them to get to is kind of our next step. What is the easiest way for them to see it? And then, I've got technicians that have maybe 2 years experience in the residential world, not in a commercial world. They've never seen some of this equipment. And back to that old technician training them, that old technician's out sick. I need those SOPs, easily accessible videos to show them this is how you shut it down safely, starting with safety, and then building into it. So, but we keep everything on our computer. I mean, it's all software based, and my technicians don't carry paper with them just because it didn't require somebody else to load it up for me to capture that data, right? So those software and integrated systems are getting more and more heavily used.
Yeah, that dovetails in.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, you go.
I was just going to say that most of the systems are the who, what, when, and where, right? And we're really the how. And so when the guys are out in the field, and how exactly do I change the belts on that safely? How do I do the lockout tag out procedure on an air handler, and make sure that that's documented so it's covering everybody's butts above and beyond the safety of that individual doing the work, and just having that all the time. And it also goes back to what I was saying. It's not always the junior. It's just an unpracticed thing. Not everything is done weekly. Some of it is biannual or annual, and you just forget. There's just way too much information. I mean, that's literally why we're sitting here is that statement right there. Is there was so much information that I saw the guys having to hold into their heads and carry around in a hospital setting where we have people's lives in our hands, literally, and it made me nervous every day when I went home, and that's where the idea came from. It's just way too much.
No, I was going to say that it dovetailed right into what you were saying. You got that 2-year person going to go do something that somebody's been doing, for 20 years, and he can have a 10-step checklist, but what does step 3 mean? How does step 4 done, right? Those are tough to translate into words. We're back to what we were saying, if they learn via video, right, that could be a better medium to kind of get that of how to do those 10 steps. And, did you lock out the equipment? Were those things done properly? Could be a short video to do things like that.
Our two HVAC techs are sworn believers in the system right now because, one of the things that came up a lot back at the beginning was the maintenance techs, if they got called out to go put belts on a fan, for example, that was normally handled by the HVAC techs. They go out there and find one belt of 3 broken, and they'd put one belt on and put it on the work order and say, okay, we changed the belt that was broken, which of course is not a great practice. You want to put a matched set of 3 new ones on there and tension them properly so that they live, right? So you've remedied the immediate issue, but you're going to have at least 1 and probably 2 more broken belts in short order doing it that way, because the one you change is carrying all the load. And people that know equipment know that, but that's part of the green technician issues that we run into. And the 2 HVAC techs love to put commentary on those pieces of equipment out there in Racky Hall and in the library, and just note on there, if you change the belts, change all of them. And this is the size they are, and that kind of notations are really easy. So.
Yeah.
We have sorry, I was just
go ahead. No, go ahead.
The notation, having a system to capture that notation. We have a lot of high-tech systems, and some of these systems are finicky. They like to operate a certain way. They like to be shut down a certain way, and they like to be started up a certain way. The shutdown and startup procedures, and for some of our equipment, can be non-standard, we'll say. So capturing those, how to capture and get it to everybody that may work on that piece of equipment, especially after hours crews. You know, if it's in a building and it's a air handling system and it needs to start up in a certain order or a certain way, the after hours crew needs access to that, so they know, because they don't deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So those systems that capture those kind of quirky things is always a plus.
Yeah, I know our building control in one of the hospitals that I had, and inevitably it happened at 2 a.m, right? It couldn't happen at 2 p.m. You know, it would glitch and you had to reset that system. And it was not a button. You had to go into the Jace and you had to unplug in a certain fashion, these 5 or 6 different things. Wait a minute, plug them back in that, you know, in a certain order and turn it back on. Not a big deal. Again, it just didn't happen enough. And I was inevitably the guy that was called at 2 a.m, and you just went, oh my gosh. And trying to explain that over the telephone, you just, you know, you just got dressed and you drove into work and went through that process and said, all right, guys, have a good night. But if it didn't happen, right, then your building didn't have any control and things got really bad. So, but it's those little quirky things, Eric, to your point, that are really nice to have at your fingertips.
Okay. And kind of jumping a little bit different here, we touched on this again earlier on. The new buildings have a lot of sustainability built into them. They're building controls in there. How are you seeing that at high tech? I know you're saying you might be renovating some buildings. Are you seeing that get introduced to all your new buildings? So again, you have more technology in there, but can we talk a little bit about that and what you're both seeing on both of those fronts for your campuses? Because they're vastly different, right? We have one in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. We have one in Central Alabama. So you're dealing with different kind of temperature extremes there. So the monitoring systems have to adapt to that. But what are you guys seeing as far as technology to monitor your buildings? Eric, if you want to go first.
Yeah, ever changing, or not changing. I will say Auburn is blessed in that we have a extremely robust building automation system, and it is mostly for almost all our buildings one manufacturer. So we've been able to kind of hone in on that, which helps us in building controls and the training. And, you know, you mentioned sustainability and our sustainability efforts there, but even with one manufacturer, the technology continuously grows and changes, and the capability continues to grow there. And we add, you know, our utility side of things. We own our own utility systems, so we have meters and all that stuff, integrating all those different systems together so we can measure the performance of that building and pick out our worst performing buildings and do, you know, some focus efforts to reduce energy consumption, reduce waste in those, but also just increase the occupant comfort. You know, taking those technologies and taking our older buildings, doing those renovations, getting the new control technology in there to make the occupants more comfortable, to see what kind of measurement energy usage we have and control that energy usage better. And also, again, back to the maintenance side of things, help the technicians troubleshoot even remotely what may be happening. You know, I get phone calls at night sitting at home, and I have my laptop, and in those newer buildings, I can boot up on my laptop from home and look into it and go, oh, well, this looks like the problem, and kind of help that technician, maybe that junior technician that's working the night shift. I can help him troubleshoot from home without having to actually come in. I just look at it on my laptop. But for these older buildings, you got to come in and start digging into it pretty well. So this, but it is, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so a follow-on question to that. So even with the building automation, are you finding that, you know, you may get some type of alert, but do the technicians always know how to resolve that alert?
They don't, and they don't. And actually, I guess, so that's a good point. So with all this building automation, one problem we have is we have too many alerts. You know, you can alarm everything if you want to, and some engineers and architects love to alarm everything in a building. Hey, this is out of sequence. Hey, it's 5 degrees above set point in this room. You know what? I don't have time to deal with every one of those things. So prioritizing those alarms has been, or those alerts is one of those things. And how, you know, you're right. How do you manage the sheer volume of alerts you have coming in? I have 400 something buildings, 9 million square feet. I get an alert if I got all of them,
Yeah,
I get a never ending alert. But systems to kind of prioritize and help the technicians know which ones to go, or the supervisors, which one's most critical, what is going to be the priority, and then what is, last time we got this is what we did. This is how you can troubleshoot this from the front end. My ultimate goal would be that technician that called me at night to get on my laptop and look at it is, you don't need me to tell you that pump alarm you have, you got to go look at this, and this is, you got a pump alarm. This is how you need to go troubleshoot that pump alarm. And if you get to this point, then call.
right.
So yes, having that troubleshooting tool, if this is how you troubleshoot it at their fingertips would be great too.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're working on heavily is decision trees, and they really fit into those spaces, right? Discharge air temperature is too warm out of an air handler, and then there's several things that could be happening, right? So let's look at the dampers. Are they functioning properly? Is there a valve that's shut or something? So something that these guys can walk through, and also a moment in there where we need you to stop and you need to call somebody now. There's those moments too, right? Where your guys are really good, but there's always that moment for safety or just, that's out of bounds. It's time to call a vendor to come in. You can always have that at the end too. So everybody's safe and your equipment is good. So the decision tree really fits into those spaces well.
Well, Dave, I'll turn it over to you because I know you're looking to do some unique things at Michigan Tech kind of along those lines. If you want to share a little bit about that.
Definitely. As we go from west to east on the campus, the age of the buildings kind of goes down. So our newer facilities are completely different from the ones that were turn of the 19th or 20th century buildings. And we've got such a huge interest on the part of the student body and the faculty to go towards sustainable energy models. So they don't want us to burn fossil fuel, but some of the buildings might as well be made out of screen doors over on the west side of the campus, and a low entropy hot water system, it'll be a popsicle by the time we get the return water back out of a building like that. So it's a challenge, because they want to go to geothermal, and the whole facility is built on a mine rock pad that's just fractured basalt, which is terrible stuff to try to put a geothermal system into the ground on. So we're trying to achieve miracles, and the buildings are different when they're newer. They have different issues. The air quality issues are different. Our air quality in the area here is fantastic, but inside the buildings that are really tight, you have to kind of know what you're doing and make sure that you're getting adequate makeup air into them, and that all the systems are working like they should. And of course, freezing is more of an issue for us than overheating. We don't even have air conditioning in most of our buildings. But the other piece that we face is these newer technicians are doing their level best to help, but lacking access to an experienced person to ask questions. We do run into a fair amount of self-inflicted failures where they'll lose control of something in a building, and instead of fixing the root cause, they'll just open a steam valve and bypass the controls and just feed live steam straight to the coil. And down in the control room where we've got the good building automation systems, we can see that we've lost control of the set point, but we can't get it to quit. You shut the valve off and it's like everything's off and it's still too hot, and you go up there and find out someone shot us in the foot. So the additional equipment that we would really like to see, and it's gotten so much cheaper, is, the IoT side of things, where if you want to detect water on a floor, that's cheap now and you can do it wirelessly. And if you want to, understand the position of a piece of equipment, a damper, for example, that stuff can be retrofitted with no wiring anymore if you want. And battery life on some of those devices is years now. So 1,200 foot ranges, that kind of thing is not out of the question for a device that's $100 or less. So we're really interested in a lot of that kind of thing, because it is really tough for us to do it with the old wired technology. But some of the other options that are out there are decent, and including just occupancy detection in buildings so that we can get away from doing calendar-based scheduling and actually schedule how the systems perform based on the usage of the facility.
Okay. Jeff,
So,
anything else to
I was just going to add one of the issues that I always ran into when we were doing sustainability in the hospitals that I worked in and the clinics that I worked in is we'd spend a lot of money recommissioning a building, getting all things all back up to speed and working well. And it seemed like inevitably within a year, it kind of found its way back because of moments in time where somebody locked out a damper or a valve or did certain things, and it just kind of stayed there. And it just, I don't know, it seemed to find its way back there. And I guess a question I would have for both of you, and one of the things that we're thinking about doing is creating energy audits inside of QModo, where, you know, a quarterly, semi-annual, annual, however you want to do it, monthly, depending on the size. I mean, Auburn would be really hard to do that like that, but sometimes it really takes somebody to walk around, right? One of the K through 12 schools that we're in, I was tagging equipment, and there I found 2 air handlers that were kind of tucked away, and they were locked in hand on the freak drives. When I questioned the maintenance staff, they said, I don't know the last time I was back there. It literally could have been like that for a year, just rocking 24/7, you know? I mean, because there probably was a moment where that needed to happen, right? And then somebody forgot to go back there, you know? So something as simple as a walk around where you're checking those kinds of things. Like you were saying, Eric, you know, you can have it on your computer where you can operate dampers and just visually watch them. Because a lot of times you're kind of chasing your own tail, right? You're sitting there on the building controls and you're like, I don't understand why this isn't working, when it's really like an arm on a damper came off and it's not actually doing what it's saying it's doing, you know? So I'd love to hear your opinions on that. Even the building controls, as simple as having, you know, when you pull up your graphics and you're looking at, say, an air handler and where everything should be set, just a quick visual that you could have on Q, where you could hold it up and go, okay, I can see that that's not correct, or that's not correct, or it's good, and walk through all of those screens, you know, every once in a while, whatever that sequence might be. So again, you know, it's something that we're talking about doing, and love to hear your opinion if you think that would be valuable.
Yes, it would be. So, you know, you kind of hit it, and Dave alluded to it too. You know, technicians, they're doing the best they can to make the client happy in the space, so they manually override the valve, or in this, either do it on the front on the automation system. They set a manual override and kind of lock it in a position, and it made the person happy, or they open that bypass valve. And when you do that, you might as well not have controls. Now it's wide open, ready to go. To finding those and undoing that is, you know, that would be a huge asset to us, or a regular schedule thing. You know, one thing, we have an energy management group here at Auburn. They're part of our utilities and energy group, and we work closely with them. Maintenance works closely with them, but they have started kind of developing some in-house stuff that has been helpful, and it's looking at those central systems as they come in and how are they acting. Because if you trend it over time, you know, if you trend over time and you look how the building should operate on a typical day when it's occupied, or a typical weekend when it's unoccupied, you can start seeing those anomalies of when that energy usage is out of the normal range, and it flags. So, you know, that energy audit of looking at, this is what it normally does, hey, this is outside the norm, you need to go look at this, is kind of where, you know, we would like to get to, because that's a quick telltale of somebody overrode something, or you got a fan on an air handler mess up, or a valve stuck open, and things like that. So looking those overrides, because those overrides can drive that too. And those energy audits of look at trend usage and relay it back to historical usage and what would it be, because those can be, they tell you a lot about the building just at the high level. You may not know the problem, but it'll tell you got a problem, you need to go be looking at it. And a lot of times it's before the occupants of the building even know there's a problem there. You make the comment, we do commissioning and retro commissioning. It's part of what energy management does. And just I came out of that group here too. That's kind of where I started out of here. But we've learned that in about 18 months, we've got to go back to that building because it's kind of reverted back to what it was. And, you know, we go back in there and we do it, and we try to keep the maintenance technicians involved in that retrocommissioning process so they kind of learn what was the things that made it revert back. But, you know, some tools for that energy modeling to kind of pinpoint that point of when you need to get back in there and really dig into it would be very useful. And I think it'd save us a lot of energy over time.
Yeah, those moments in between, right? That you lost a lot of dollars out that went out the door and a lot of gas and everything else. Yeah. Well, good.
Okay. We'll end with this kind of last question here, because I'd be interested to know. Jeff and I had lunch with a few different technician, senior technicians, and they were talking just about a lot of these building monitoring systems do monitor a lot, but they don't monitor everything, right? And they were lamenting how we've gotten a bit away from either daily logs or weekly checks of systems. But would love to get y'all's opinion on it, and maybe what your thoughts are on that too. So, Dave.
Well, we're definitely still using some logging for tracking things, one of them being the overrides, like opening a bypass valve. So we're really working hard at that kind of thing, but there's definitely room in there for us to do some better things technology wise to help us understand better what's going on. And I totally agree with everything Eric said about that. And the retro commissioning part of it is something that we work at, and I would agree with the 18-month time frame there. By that time, it's usually fully in the ditch and it's time to go back and shine it up again. But as he said, getting the technicians involved oftentimes leads to some answers of why it goes back that way. There's an operational challenge or some kind of a control issue that can be fixed so that it doesn't go back there again. And that's, part of it too, to make it stick. And I just really think that somewhere in between our work order system and our building automation systems and a knowledge base of these decision trees, as you explained it, Jeff, is where the answer is, where it can just say something's not the same as it was before. Someone should go look. And over time, I think we could teach a system like that to recognize common things and say, hey, this is pointing at a failed damper, or it's pointing at something leaking, or whatever the case may be, and could really help with our limited number of people to have them going somewhere where there's something they can actually do, as opposed to go there and look and not know what they're going into. And then focusing on things with a high payback on critical equipment would be a big deal for us.
Okay. Eric, anything to add on to that?
Dave made a good point. We still have some paper logs here. We've tried to own for regulatory compliance things, boilers, pressure vessels, things like that, environmental. The state still likes to see paper for that, but we have tried to push as much as we can into our work management system for record keeping. Try to use that as our database and trend those temperatures, pressures, and things like that. I guess one challenge we do have, and Dave pointed out, is we've got our work management system that has all this data captured and the trends from when they recorded the pressures on this equipment. We got the paper logs, and then we have our building automation system, and joining those two systems together and kind of using the information in both and the historical data in both to hit those high level, high priority items is a challenge. How do you integrate those two systems and make them use the data in both of them and present it in a format that's usable to find with our limited staff? Like Dave said, our limited staff and limited dollars, where's the biggest bang for our buck? Where are we going to save the most money? What's going to be the biggest impact? And things like that. And where, from a planning standpoint, it's trending the wrong way. If it's trending the wrong way, we need to be looking at planning, plans to get it back in line. It may not be that we can do it now, but at least we look at some budgetary concerns and manpower concerns. And all right, we need to focus something here in the next 6, 8, 12 months. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I
Well,
think,
Jim, go ahead, Jeff.
no, I was just gonna say really quickly on the trending, sometimes you don't know that it's going out of place, right? So you need a tool really to go, hey, Eric and Dave, like this is wrong, you know, give you the heads up. And then I think the great thing with Q again is it's got the how behind it. So not only are we giving you an alarm, but we're also giving you or your guys, whether that's a senior or a junior, the how to fix it, you know, the path forward. So I think that's really valuable too.
For sure.
Okay. Well, Eric and Dave, a very sincere and appreciative of you guys joining us and giving us your time here to have this discussion. We thank you very much, and we hope you have a good rest of your day. If anyone else attendees have questions, please feel free to reach out and we'll answer them as best as we can. But thank you everyone for joining. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Eric.
Very
Thank you,
much.
Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Take care.